My husband's family didn't know I spoke their language. I'm Canadian, born and raised in Vancouver, but my parents are originally from Korea. I grew up speaking Korean at home and English everywhere else. It's pretty common for second-generation kids like me to be fully bilingual, but I guess I don't look like what people expect when they think of someone who speaks Korean fluently. I met my husband Daniel 5 years ago at a marketing conference in Toronto. He's white, from a small town in Ontario, and we hit it off immediately. We dated for 2 years before getting engaged, and during that whole time, the topic of me speaking Korean just never came up. Daniel knew my parents were Korean, obviously, but he'd only met them a handful of times and they spoke English around him. It genuinely didn't occur to me that this would become a thing. The first time I met Daniel's extended family was at his cousin's wedding in Ottawa. His Aunt Margaret had married a Korean man named James about 30 years ago, and they had 3 kids who were all around our age. The whole family was there, including James's brother Peter and his wife Susan, who had flown in from Seoul. During the reception, I was sitting at a table with Daniel when his mom Linda came over with Margaret and Susan. Linda introduced me to them, and Susan smiled politely and said hello in English with a heavy accent. Then Margaret said something to Susan in Korean. Something like, "She seems nice, but very quiet. I wonder if Daniel really thought this through." I kept my face completely neutral and just smiled. Daniel was oblivious, chatting with his uncle about hockey. That's when I realized they had no idea I spoke Korean, and I made the split-second decision not to tell them. For the next 3 hours, I listened to Daniel's family talk about me in Korean right in front of me. Susan told Margaret that I seemed too skinny and probably didn't know how to cook. Margaret agreed and said I looked like I spent too much money on clothes. Peter joined in at one point and said I seemed stuck up because I wasn't talking much, completely ignoring the fact that they kept pulling Daniel away from me to introduce him to various relatives. The worst part was when Linda, Daniel's own mother, sat down with Margaret and Susan and started talking about how she wished Daniel had dated that girl Emily from his hometown instead. In Korean, she said, "Emily would have given us grandchildren by now. This one looks like she cares more about her career." I just sat there, sipping my wine, smiling pleasantly, while internally screaming. The wedding ended and I didn't say anything to Daniel. I figured it was a one-time thing and I'd probably never see most of those people again anyway. But then we got engaged, and suddenly there were all these family gatherings. Every single time, the Korean side of Daniel's family would smile to my face and then say something rude about me in Korean the moment they thought I couldn't understand. Susan told Margaret I was too westernized and would never respect traditional values. Peter said I probably couldn't even use chopsticks properly. Margaret worried out loud that I would make Daniel move too far away from family. This went on for 8 months, right up until our wedding. At the reception, Daniel and I did our rounds greeting guests at each table. When we got to the table with Margaret, James, Peter, and Susan, I greeted them warmly in English like I always did. Then I turned to Susan and said in perfect Korean, "Thank you so much for coming all the way from Seoul. It means so much to us. And Susan, I've been meaning to tell you that I absolutely love your hanbok. The embroidery is stunning." The look on her face was priceless. Her mouth literally fell open. Margaret choked on her champagne. Peter's eyes went wide. I continued in Korean. "I'm so grateful to be joining this family. I know there were concerns about whether I was right for Daniel, but I promise I'll take good care of him. And Linda, I've actually been taking cooking classes. I'd love to learn some of your recipes." Linda turned bright red. Margaret looked like she wanted to disappear under the table. Daniel leaned over and whispered, "Did you just speak Korean?" "Fluently," I said. "My whole life." I excused us to greet the next table, leaving them sitting there in stunned silence. They're extremely polite to me now. Overly polite, actually. Susan sends me recipes. Margaret texts me constantly asking how I'm doing. Linda has stopped mentioning Emily entirely. Daniel thinks it's hilarious. His mom is still mortified.